Today, we've really hit the bottom, with a supposedly modern graphics card costing me a measly 15 cents right from the depths of eBay. This right here is supposedly my new graphics card, which I picked up off of eBay for around 13 pence, which is around 15 cents for those of you in the States, through a mixture of it being one of the sketchiest listings that I think I've ever put a bid on, through to it using one of those less than trustworthy eBay and PayPal coupons I was given, which all in all made it cost less than the postage, which apparently has been sent by an eBay business account, at least that's what my local postie told me. But what is inside the box? Is it indeed my new graphics card? Well, it looks like it lives up to the name, as it certainly does look like a graphics card damaged bad, which is what I bought it as, although graphics was actually spelt wrong. I don't know how you end up spelling it graphics, but still. And I bought this card with just one photo being shown, but the extent of the damage isn't exactly fantastic. I can't make out if this was the seller's original damage or the poor packaging, because there was no bubble wrap, it was just shoved in a cardboard box, one that looks like it's already been used before. But all in all, the heatsink's been completely bent in, there are no names or branding on the card, and a slightly dirty and grubby PCB. So what have we got here? Because it sure as hell doesn't look like any graphics card I've seen recently. By sticking it in my main PC, yep, I really do end up doing that far too often, I was amazed to see that this graphics card did actually post. At least as far as Windows. Given that I didn't have any real idea what the graphics card was, I tried using both the Nvidia and the AMD auto detect options, both of which promptly failed, although the card was recognised as an Nvidia card. However, when I tried to install some offline drivers I downloaded, they would crash on install, so it looks like we need to take this out of my system and figure out what's going on, and if we can repair and use it. Oh, and it's more than worth noting that this isn't a passive card, it managed to hit 115 degrees C and crashed, which is why I took it out of my system. So what better excuse to get this repaired than waiting for it to cool down and then seeing what we've actually bought. After promptly stripping down the card to see what was going on inside, it turns out we've actually managed to get a hold of a GTX 550 Ti, but a very basic one from the looks of things that hasn't had the best of a life. Specifications wise, it was never a bad card, being based on the more than capable 40nm Fermi 2 architecture, with 192 CUDA cores, 1 whole gigabyte of GDDR5 based VRAM, it has relatively stable drivers, well, relatively stable also meaning they're actually surprisingly good, with rudimentary DirectX 12 support thrown in there, and as of today they're available for the low price of 15 cents or 13 pence, although really these things tend to sell for under £10 quite often. But why is this card so basic? And why aren't we able to get any drivers onto it? And although the GTX 550 Ti wasn't ever a hot card, it's still an older Fermi card, so this thing was not meant to be passively cooled, so how long has the previous owner spent running it without a cooler? Like, it can just about deal with the desktop, but try running anything at all, even a video, and it will warm up so much it will crash. But we'll have to deal with that for when the time comes. For now, we just need to get it working. After a bit of a cleanup, some fresh thermal paste and all that jazz, I stuck a huge 30-watt fan facing at the card. Because you see those fan headers? Originally I was going to try and utilise those to put some sort of fan to be powered on by the heatsink, you know, just strap it down with tape or something. But they aren't giving any power at all on any of those pins. I went over it with a voltmeter and I couldn't get any power output across them, which is likely why we got sent this card without any type of cooling on it. Either way, we fixed that issue with a 30-watt fan. What we need to fix now is our driver situation. And I went back and downloaded some older GeForce drivers, which I installed via the Device Manager menu, which took around half an hour to work. I genuinely thought the card had crashed or my PC had locked up, but eventually we did seem to have a working GTX 550 card. And other than the fact I'd managed to change all of my monitors to vertical mode by doing this, it did seem to be working. We are going to be testing this in my main PC, which seems to scare a lot of people when I end up testing these strange cards in the computer, but it is time to find out how well a 15-cent graphics card is holding up in 2020. And trust me, the results are going to surprise some of you. I decided to start off with BeamNG. It's not exactly a AAA title, and we've seen it scale well to older hardware. So when running the game with its medium preset in 1080p, the game seemed to run pretty well, hovering around the high 30s in terms of frame rate. This was for most of the scenarios and situations. However, it was worth noting that some of the really heavy maps would cause the frame rate to tank down dramatically, mostly due to the small amount of VRAM. Namely, the map Italy had some real issues on the card, and in certain instances the frame rate was nearly going into single digits, but usually hovered around the mid-20s. Still not exactly ideal on those heavier maps, but for simpler tasks it was absolutely fine. Following on from this, I was surprised by the MasterChef collection running in 1080p with the performance preset. Anything else did prove a little bit too VRAM heavy for the card, and would run, well, it'd run okay, it just wouldn't stick to 60 FPS. But when running with these settings, the game stuck to 60 FPS in 1080p, and only really dropped below this in heavy explosions and gunfights. People also asked me to turn up the FOV from the stock settings that the game comes with, and even then the card handled that absolutely fine. Really though, this game does seem to run well on pretty low-end hardware, and had no issues with all of these things factored in. All in all, off to an impressive start. Given how well things were running so far, I thought I'd try throwing a 2020 title up onto the card, with Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord, which, well, didn't look fantastic in the 576p resolution, but was able to use the medium preset. And the game did run pretty damn well. It didn't look fantastic by any means, but even in larger battles, the card was more than happy maintaining a playable frame rate. Large groups of enemies could cause frame rate drops slightly under 30 FPS, but the frame times were never inconsistent enough for you to really notice. Considering the drivers I'd been using are from well before this game was released, I'm more surprised that the game even launched, yet alone ran this well. Next on my list to test was PUBG, as the game did seem to run pretty well and is pretty popular right now, and the game seems to have at least been optimised a bit, meaning that it should be playable on this card. And the game did seem to run alright in 720p with lower and medium settings, and I had no issues keeping the frame rate above 30 FPS. The VRAM did seem to be one of the main causes behind these lower settings that I needed to have for a few things like shadows, and I think textures as well I had to have turned on low, but most things I managed to keep on medium so the game didn't look too bad. Overall, we played the game with a less than stellar frame rate, however it ran okay just above 30 FPS. Not exactly what you'd like to be seeing, but still better than the game used to run on cards like this. But it wouldn't be a Budget Builds benchmark suite without testing GTA 5, which ran with a nice mixture of medium and high settings, and ran absolutely fine. It ran perfect with an average FPS just over 60 frames per second. All in all, not much else to say other than it was a fantastic experience. Higher resolutions weren't so great as you're so limited by VRAM you do have to turn the settings down. However, this game is nowhere near as VRAM intensive as people make it out to be. CSGO ran pretty decently with low settings and high shadows. This was of course in the 1080p resolution, and you could double your FPS if you moved down to 720p. Really though, the frame rate seemed stable enough at 1080p that you could definitely get by with playing the game. And in competitive matches and game modes with fewer players, the frame rate was often higher than this, as the less hectic game modes did lead to fewer frame drops and overall a much more stable frame rate. The card will get you by for stuff like this, and is actually impressive considering the age, and of course the price of the card. City Skylines ran less than perfect. I had to run the game with low settings, which is already not great, and even then we were playing in 720p. For a city builder that really does not enjoy running on low-end hardware at all, it's not exactly a great thing for City Skylines. I mean, we can max out GTA 5 at the same resolution, yet we can't build a little city. Still a bit strange. I mean, the game was playable, even with the city that we built on stream the other day, which is a bit of a larger one, and larger than one I usually benchmark. But yeah, I'd really like to see better performance overall here, and I'm going to have to put that down to not being the card's fault, but actually the optimizations of the game. Finally, I thought I would round off with Minecraft, because it's a classic game that should run on every graphics card ever. So even with a texture pack, fancy settings, a 16 chunk render distance, and a 1080p resolution, we were seeing a frame rate well in excess of 100 FPS. I did try running with the path tracing shaders, but that really didn't end well at all. Even with very low resolutions, we were seeing single digit figures. However, if you don't mind forgoing these though, the card runs absolutely fine. Then, to really round us off with, what better way to push the card to its absolute limit by running 3D Mark's Fire Strike. Not only because it gives a great comparison to all the other cards that I've ever benchmarked, but because I'll be able to throw those up on screen while I leave this running on a loop to see what kind of temperatures we actually end up getting. Because, you know, we don't really have a fan on the graphics card, we just have a sad lump of aluminium with a 30-watt desktop fan pointed at it. All in all, we didn't experience any throttling, but the card did tend to idle in the mid-60 degrees, and would often sit somewhere in the mid-90s when gaming, but it never throttled. All the performance we were seeing was down to the card's real-world performance, and I know that I'd need to make some real hardware modifications to actually get a fan on there, probably involving a bit of soldering, and really, that's going to push up the price and effort for what is ultimately a 15-cent graphics card. There we go. I am genuinely amazed. Firstly, we had a card arrive for such a measly amount. The seller seemed to be a business account, hence why my discount codes worked, and likely why you could actually be bothered to post the card for such a minuscule amount, because it's all going on the business account anyway. And the packaging could have been a little bit better, but then again the seller never exactly had the best of reputations, because, well, if you're going to be selling on eBay and you don't even bother to package things, you're not going to have a great reputation. And the performance we got out of a GTX 550 Ti was really impressive. Now, people are going to say this looks like a scam 750 Ti from a few years ago. In fact, 3D Mark actually detected it as a scam 750 Ti. But the thing installed GTX 550 Ti drivers only, albeit some programs, like I said, would detect it as the 750 Ti. It was never running the 750 Ti drivers. That's the thing. So really, I think that there's something that's going on with the BIOS here. Either that, or this is just a very strange card that's ended up from somewhere that just looks like a scam card but isn't. But at this stage, it's 15 cents. It's probably been tampered with. I'm more amazed that it actually worked, and I'm even more amazed it managed to run some 2020 titles. Although, it didn't really break a sweat with general usage. I was able to watch a few videos, I was able to set up a stream on it, everything like that worked absolutely fine. But overall, I hope you enjoyed this video, seeing what a 15-cent graphics card can do. Its origins are still a bit of a mystery. It could be a scam graphics card, it could just be some dodgy card that someone's picked up from somewhere. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching, good night. That makes that card the cheapest card on eBay, at least in 2020, and I doubt I'm going to find one cheaper than that. That was genuinely abysmally cheap. If you like this video, you can like and subscribe for more, dislike if you didn't, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.